Good evening, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here with yet another update on Dave's act and his minimalist SunFoil. That is the 20-watt panel mounted across the airflow, bolted to the roof racks of his Ford Explorer, which is a V8 petrol-engined automatic four-wheel drive. And Dave lives in Canberra, which is Australia's national capital, 360,000 people or something like that. So he's got city driving conditions to play with. Now, the backstory for those of you who don't know, Dave watched some of my YouTube movies. He couldn't think of any reason why I was wrong. So, as I suggested, he measured his fuel burn, 5.67 kilometres to the litre. He's got a fuel warning light, and when that comes on, that's when he goes and fills up. So that's why he always puts maybe 30 to 35 litres in, right? Sometimes he does that 3 times in 7 days, right? On the 1st, on the 3rd and on the 7th. Sometimes he does it once in 7 days. So, interesting experiment. Whereas I put a lot of time and effort into streamlining the solar panel, Dave decided to stick one up there fast. Whereas I worked out a complicated, well, not really complicated, but I worked out a formula to be able to calculate the optimum panel. Dave just went for a panel that he could afford right away. So he needs a much bigger panel. I think he needs 50 or 60 watts. He's going to measure his car and figure out what my formula says he needs, and then he's going to go slightly above that, as far as I understand. He's going to take his 20-watt panel and stick it on his daughter's car, but he hasn't bought the daughter's car. Bit of a caution with that idea, Dave. In your message to me, you said you were going to put the 20-watt panel on a, quote, Barina type car. I have a friend who has a Barina. The Barina has a 95 amp hour battery. Same size battery as I've got. The Barina has a 120 amp alternator. I think it's at 3-to-1 step-up ratio. I think that's because the people who designed the Barina realised it was going to be doing short runs. So the Barina puts a particularly large amount of its fuel burn into its battery. It's got a large battery. Most of the Barinas I've seen are automatics. And you can't push start an automatic unless you get it going at 40 kilometres an hour. It's a pain in the arse, you know. So, you may find that the Barina needs a panel nearly as big as your Explorer. Right? I would say 30 to 40 watts is a minimum starting size for a Barina if it's got a 95 amp hour battery and it's an automatic with a 120 amp alternator and a... Yep, okay, Barina's got a big electrical system and a small petrol engine, which is going to work very hard to service the electrical system. A Barina in city traffic is going to really love a solar panel. That's my guess. But anyway, on to Dave's figures, right? Now, again, for anybody who hasn't been paying attention to the story, Dave's first fuel burn measurement was 5.67 kilometres to the litre. At that, forgive the double start, my battery is now full. At that point, 5.67 kilometres to the litre, that's when Dave ordered the parts for his SunFoil. While he was waiting for his parts, he went to 6.01 kilometres to the litre. That's what I would call placebo effect. And that shows up on the graph in orange. It's 5.99%. Call it 6%, okay? He put his SunFoil on in the middle of a tank of fuel, and he went from 6.01 to 6.525 kilometres to the litre. That's an 8.5% improvement in the middle of one tank of fuel. That's pretty remarkable. The next thing that happened was that Dave accidentally got sucked in by the low price of the 91 octane 10% ethanol fuel. At the same time as that happened, he and his 2 teenagers noticed the extra torque. And as a result of the extra torque and the lower energy in the fuel, he went down to 5.76 kilometres to the litre, which is still 1.5% better than his original baseline. He did the 91 octane biofuel yet again. However, as the battery improved, it began to overcome the extra torque effect. Then he went back to 95 octane pure petrol, and he came up to a high point of 7.04 kilometres to the litre. Then he went and did some mountain driving. That was his excuse for the drop to 6.93 kilometres to the litre. And then he was apt to blame his children for the lead foot drop down to 6.63. But as I pointed out to him, mate, your best fuel burn was when you used 2 days to go through 33.13 litres. Here you've come up with 7 days, right? And your fuel burn has gone down. You haven't been going up any mountains, but you've had what's called empty tank evaporation. And what that means is that as the puddle of fuel gets to be shallower and shallower and shallower, it gets more and more surface area with respect to its mass. And as the surface area to mass ratio changes, it is less able to hold its low temperature, and therefore it evaporates faster, even in winter. And yeah, just to give his air conditioner something to do, Dave's car is painted black. Alright, so it makes empty tank evaporation a bad thing even in winter. Okay, so it's now the 31st of July 2012, and Dave sent me some figures tonight via a personal message, and it's taken him 4 days to get through 33.3 litres, do 227 kilometres, and his fuel burn was 7.09, which is the best he's had yet. So as far as I can see, sometime about the middle of September, if we extrapolate using the pipe stem between the 7.04 and the 7.09, we can see that sometime in the middle of September, Dave might be getting near 8 kilometres to the litre. In a perfect universe, if everything goes well. But you know what? I don't know whether we're going to find that out, as interesting as it would be, because I suspect that sometime before then, Dave and his carpenter and his clamp meter and his going on eBay, he may actually come up with a slightly better than optimum size panel, streamlined, and put that on his Explorer, and then stick the 20 watt panel on whatever he's going to have for his daughter. So we're going to find out what happens in the future, but at the moment I'm really happy. Dave has proved the veracity of everything I've said at the low end of the spectrum. I and my son and old mate down on the alternative lifestyle community, we're proving what's happening when you spot on the figures in terms of optimum size PV. And over in America, there's a bloke called Michael at Precise Bible, and he's nailed down all the figures for what happens when you go from having a tiny weeny little panel to having a panel so big that he's got 60 watts more on his car than I've got on my house. 180 watts for his solar assisted pickup, and I've got 120 watts on my tower of power, which is running all 3 lights that I'm filming by at the moment. So yeah, Warbles is pretty happy. From 5.67 to 7.09 kilometres in 37 days. And my experience is that an otherwise healthy but currently starving, if you'll pardon the pun, automotive battery, if you fill it up and fully charge it every day, its storage efficiency and its storage capacity will gradually improve for 100 days. Right? And if you had to buy the petrol to make the electricity to try and rejuvenate the battery, it would not be worth doing. But sunlight is free. That's why solar panels, streamlined solar panels, SunFoils, aerofoils that run on sunlight and you can put them on your car. That's why it's such a simple, good idea. Yahoo yippee. Ciao.